Good Wednesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for September the 13th. Today, we are reading together in 1 Kings chapter 18, which is going to tell us about the first big clash that we see between Ahab and God's prophet Elijah. So let me get the text up on the screen for us. We'll read along together today. Hope that you're having a great Wednesday. Hope that the beginning of your week has gone well. I appreciate you taking some time to read along with me in the Bible today. 1 Kings 18 and verse number 1. After a long time, the word of Yahweh came to Elijah in the 3rd year. Go and present yourself to Ahab. I will send rain on the surface of the land. So Elijah went to present himself to Ahab. The famine was severe in Samaria, and Ahab called for Obadiah, who was in charge of the palace. Obadiah was a man who greatly feared Yahweh and took 100 prophets and hid them, 50 men, to a cave, and provided them with food and water when Jezebel slaughtered Yahweh's prophets. Ahab said to Obadiah, go throughout the land to every spring and to every wadi. Perhaps we'll find grass so we can keep the horses and mules alive and not have to destroy any cattle. They divided the land between them in order to cover it. Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went the other way by himself. While Obadiah was walking along the road, Elijah suddenly met him. When Obadiah recognized him, he fell down. He fell face down and said, is it you, my lord Elijah? Well, it is I, he replied. Go tell your lord, Elijah is here. But Obadiah said, what sin have I committed that you are handing your servant over to Ahab to put me to death? As Yahweh your God lives, there is no nation or kingdom where my lord has not sent someone to search for you. When they said he is not here, he made the kingdom or nation swear they had not found you. Now you say, go tell your lord Elijah is here? But when I leave you, the spirit of Yahweh may carry you off to some place I don't know. Then when I go and report to Ahab and he doesn't find you, he will kill me. But I, your servant, have feared Yahweh from my youth. Wasn't it reported to my lord what I did when Jezebel slaughtered the Yahweh's prophets? I hid 100 of the prophets of Yahweh, 50 men to a cave, and I provided them with food and water. Now you say, go tell your Lord, Elijah is here. He will kill me. Then Elijah said, as Yahweh of armies lives, in whose presence I stand, today I will present myself to Ahab. Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him. Then Ahab went to meet Elijah. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, is that you, the one ruining Israel, or the one troubling Israel? He replied, I have not ruined or troubled Israel, but you and your father's family have, because you have abandoned Yahweh's commands and followed the Baals. Now summon all Israel to meet me at Mount Carmel, along with the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab summoned all the Israelites and gathered the prophets at Mount Carmel. When Elijah approached all the people and said, how long will you waver between two opinions? If Yahweh is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. But the people didn't answer him a word. Then Elijah said to the people, I am the only remaining prophet of Yahweh, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Let 2 bulls be given to us. They are to choose 1 bull for themselves, cut it in pieces, and place it on the wood, but not light the fire. I will prepare the other bull and place it on the wood, but not light the fire. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of Yahweh. The God who answers with fire, he is God. All the people answered, that's fine. Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, since you are so numerous, choose for yourselves 1 bull and prepare it first. Then call on the name of your God, but don't light the fire. So they took the bull that he gave them, prepared it, and called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, Baal, answer us. But there was no sound. No one answered. Then they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah mocked them. He said, shout loudly, for he's a god. Maybe he's thinking it over. Maybe he has wandered away. Or maybe he's on the road. Perhaps he's sleeping and will wake up. They shouted loudly and cut themselves with knives and spears according to their custom until blood gushed over them. All afternoon they kept on raving until the offering of the evening sacrifice, but there was no sounds. No one answered. No one paid attention. Then Elijah said to the people, "Come near me." So all the people approached him. Then he prepared Yahweh's altar, or repaired Yahweh's altar that had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Israel, to whom the word of Yahweh had come, saying, "Israel will be your name." And he built an altar with the stones in the name of Yahweh. Then he made a trench around the altar, cut enough to hold about 4 gallons. Made a trench around the altar large enough to hold about 4 gallons. Next, he arranged the wood, cut up the bull, and placed it on the wood. He said, "Fill your water pots with water and pour it on the offering to be burned and on the wood." Then he said, "A second time." And they did it a second time. Then he said, "A third time." And they did it a third time. So the water ran all around the altar. He even filled the trench with water. At the time for the offering of the evening sacrifice, the prophet Elijah approached the altar and said, "Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today let it be known that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant, and that at your word I have done all these things. Answer me, Yahweh. Answer me so that this people will know that you, Yahweh, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back." Then Yahweh's fire fell and consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, and the dust, and it licked up the water that was in the trench. When all the people saw it, they fell face down and said, "Yahweh, he is God. Yahweh, he is God." Then Elijah ordered them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Do not let even one of them escape." So they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the Wadi Kishon and slaughtered them there. Elijah said to Ahab, "Go up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of a rainstorm." So Ahab went to eat and drink, but Elijah went up to the summit of Carmel. He bent down on the ground and put his face between his knees. Then he said to his servant, "Go up and look toward the sea." So he went and looked and said, "There's nothing." 7 times Elijah said, "Go back." And on the 7th time he reported, "There's a cloud as small as a man's hand coming up from the sea." Then Elijah said, "Go and tell Ahab, get your chariot ready and go down so the rain doesn't stop you." In a little while, the sky grew dark and the clouds and winds, and there was a downpour. Or it grew dark with clouds and winds, and there was a downpour. So Ahab got in his chariot and went to Jezreel. The power of Yahweh was on Elijah, and he tucked his mantle into his belt and ran ahead of Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. That is 1 Kings chapter 18. Again, a pretty well-known story, pretty famous story about Elijah facing the prophets of Baal. The text says, after a long time, the word of Yahweh came to Elijah in the 3rd year. So it seems that he remained in this place, Zarephath, from the previous chapter. He remained there for some time and then was called by Yahweh to go and present himself to Ahab, that it was time for the rain to come. And we're given some details about the famine that had taken place in Samaria because of the lack of rain. Normally, famines and droughts went hand in hand with one another. He called for his servant Ahab, he called for servant Obadiah so they can go hunt down some water together in order to feed their livestock. We're given some detail from the author, the fact that Obadiah, though he worked for Ahab, was a man who worshiped Yahweh. He was someone who feared Yahweh, and even went to the extent of saving 100 prophets of Yahweh whenever Jezebel had gone on one of her rampages of killing the prophets of Yahweh. So he was a good man, on the wrong side, unfortunately, but he was a good man doing good work. And it's very interesting that here is Ahab unable to water his livestock, but we have this man, Obadiah, who has enough water in order to supply it to these 100 prophets. Baal, the weather god, sure doesn't seem to be doing a very good job of providing for his people. But here is Obadiah, the man who fears Yahweh, who is being a much better provider than Baal himself. And it's just kind of funny, too, thinking about the fact that the king is someone who is going in search of water. Why not send somebody else to do that? I don't know. That's just very, very strange thing to see. Well, while they're out looking for water, Ahab goes one way, Obadiah goes another way, and Elijah all of a sudden appears before Obadiah. Obadiah recognizes him. He says, "Oh man, Elijah, that's you." He's like, "It's me, and go tell Ahab that I'm here." No, Obadiah says, "Well, why do you want to kill me?" It'll be strange to us. What's he talking about? Well, it seems that Ahab had been on the search for Elijah, and whenever they said that he's not here, he would make them swear to it. And then Obadiah is thinking that if I tell him that you're here, and then he sends people to come find you, what's to stop the spirit from taking you away somewhere else without me knowing? If I tell him you're here and you're not here, I'm going to die. But Elijah assures him that I'll be here. Just go and send for him. So he does. And Ahab and Elijah end up meeting together. And Ahab's his greeting to Elijah is that you, the one ruining Israel, or the one who is troubling Israel? Is that you, troubler, oh troubler of Israel? And it's quite ironic for Ahab to say that to Elijah, since it's actually Elijah or Ahab who is troubling Israel in the grand scheme of things. But it could be true in some ways from Ahab's perspective. It's Elijah who might have angered. He might have angered Baal, so the Baal would shut up the skies. He would say that you're the one that has caused all these issues, Elijah. But of course, the reality is that it's not that Baal has been angered, is that Elijah, endowed by the power of God, has commanded for the skies to be shut up so that there would not be any rain. But now it's time for the great confrontation. We're going to see who the real God is. You get your prophets of Baal and your prophets of the Ashereths and bring them up on Mount Carmel, which was known as Baal's home turf. It was his mountain. Horeb is known as the mountain of God, of Yahweh, but this mountain would be known as the mountain of Baal. Bring them here and let's have a face-off. Your prophets against me. So that's what Ahab does. In fact, he summons all of Israel to come see this, because in his mind, he's thinking, oh, well, we've got this. We've got the numbers. We've got the home turf. We're certainly going to win this battle, whatever it might be. And Elijah, to me, this sounds a lot like the, what's the word I'm thinking of? The ultimatum that Joshua gives at the end of Joshua, where he says, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods and the Amorites and the pagans, or choose Yahweh, whoever it is, just choose somebody and serve them. That's kind of what Elijah says here. How long are you going to waver between two opinions? Why are you hobbling on two crutches? Why can't you make up your mind where you want to be? Either serve Yahweh or serve Baal. Just choose. Don't sit here and have this synchronistic type of worship where you want to serve both. No, you've got to serve one or the other. You cannot have both. And Elijah says, we're going to give you basically an opportunity to judge who you want to serve. We're going to both offer a sacrifice. We're going to have one bull on each altar. We're not going to light it, but we're going to call upon our God to light the fire once it has been prepared. And for them, they're thinking, oh, well, this is definitely something that Baal can do. He's the thunder god. In fact, there's a lot of iconography of the ancient world where Baal is depicted as having a thunderbolt in his hand. Might remind you a lot of Zeus. Wonder why. So they're thinking, this is definitely something that Baal can do. He'll just send down a bolt of lightning. He'll catch the altar on fire. We'll be good to go. So that's from their perspective. And that's what they do. They end up setting everything up. They say that's what we're going to do. They set it all up. They put the bull on there. They prepare everything, and they start calling on the name of Baal. Baal, answer us. But 2 times here in verse 26, and also at the end of verse 29, there was no sound. No one answered. No one paid attention. And Elijah kind of gets in on the fun here, and he starts mocking them. Well, he's a god. And again, from our lesson this past Sunday, he's a spiritual being. He's a supernatural being. Where's he at? Maybe he's thinking over. Maybe he wandered away, or maybe he's on the road. Perhaps he's sleeping. The turned aside or wandered away could also mean relieving himself. So kind of crude for Elijah to say this. But again, he's just mocking this God, this spiritual being that they worship. Maybe he's sleeping and he'll wake up. So they just go on more and more. They're shouting loudly. They're cutting themselves. They're participating in all of this paganistic type of worship. Again, nothing happens. Why? Because pitted here against God, there is no true power that this supernatural being has. In fact, the true supernatural being has no power at all except deception. Think about that. Think about just the devil himself. What power does he actually have except to deceive? That's really the power that evil spiritual beings have. They deceive. And that's what this God, the supernatural being, has done. Deceive these people. Make it seem like he has power. You know, they're thinking, well, Baal has provided us with rain for so long. You know, what's happened here? Oh, he must be mad at Elijah. And here's the opportunity for him to get Elijah. But yet he doesn't, because he can't. So Elijah, then it's his turn, and he really stacks the table against God, against Yahweh, by not only rebuilding this altar, but by also dousing it with water. Because, of course, I mean, it's hard to catch anything on fire whenever it's soaked in water. So he is providing the opportunity here for Yahweh to really show his power. And that's exactly what takes place. Elijah says, Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant, and that at your word I've done all these things. Answer me, Yahweh, answer me, so that people will know that you, Yahweh, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back. Present yourself now and give these people a reason without a shadow of a doubt, even though they had plenty of reason to serve Yahweh. Now show them right here in this moment why you deserve to be served, why you are the great God, the God of gods and the Lord of lords. It says that Yahweh's fire fell and consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, the dust. It licked up the water that was in the trench. And then all the people saw, and they knew that it's Yahweh, not Baal, but Yahweh. He is God. He is Elohim. Yahweh, he is Elohim. He is the great God. He is the great spiritual, supernatural being. And at this, it is Elijah who orders all the prophets to be captured and killed. And then interestingly tells Elijah tells Ahab that he needs to get up and go on to eat a meal. Go ahead, go ponder this over, Ahab, and think about what you have seen. That's what Ahab does. Very strange that he seems to brush this off as if it is nothing. But Elijah, he goes up on the mountain, and he and his servant go through this bit where the servant goes and looks a few times from the mountain. Finally, he sees the cloud. He says, hey, go tell Ahab, you better hurry up, because the rain is a-coming. So Ahab ends up getting in his chariot, heads toward Jezreel. And it says the power of Yahweh was on Elijah. He tucked his mantle under his belt and ran ahead of Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. What a crazy event we have, or a series of events taking place here in chapter 18. But again, it is Yahweh who is showing himself to be the true God. Yes, there are these other supernatural beings that deceive people into worshiping them because of the foolishness of mankind and the darkening of their hearts. But there is truly only one God who has true power and is truly worthy of being worshipped, and it is Yahweh and Yahweh alone. This chapter proves that without a shadow of a doubt. Everything incredible that takes place, it is done by the power of God. And you would think, after seeing all this, you would think that Ahab might learn something and might change his ways. But unfortunately, that is just not the case at all. And we're going to continue to see his hard-heartedness. We're going to continue to see, the hardness of his heart. We're going to continue to see, especially Jezebel and her just wickedness within the story. But lots to look at as we continue to read through 1 Kings here over the next few days. Let's see, today is Wednesday. So tomorrow will be 19, 20, 21, and I think we'll finish up in 22 on Monday. So still a few days here in 1 Kings, but lots of good stuff for us to read and learn about. If you have any questions about this text here in 1 Kings chapter 18, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. Hope everyone has a great rest of your Wednesday. Looking forward to seeing everybody tonight as we gather together for our Bible studies. All right, actually, no, we're gathered for our monthly song, scripture, and supplication service very much looking forward to that on this Wednesday. Hope it be a very good and encouraging evening. Again, thanks for tuning in today. Everyone have a great rest of your Wednesday. Take care. God bless.